that more or less there are some people that just that join. I'm gonna start right now this webinar that is again like activating an inclusive local ecosystem, part of the climate transition map. Today I am here with so Net Zero Cities, the mission platform. We are many organizations supporting the Net Zero Cities. So today you will see some of us, and you will see that that we are part of many organizations. For today, there is some colleagues of mine that are part of Democratic Society, that we are supporting the citizens' engagement and urban stakeholder engagement, but also other organizations will be co-hosting with us this webinar. Anna Huttunen from Climate Kick will be moderating with us. And also Cyril from TNO is also moderating with us, and also Tamami, you will also see Tamami, that is another from Polyme, that is also going to be co-hosting this session with us. I'm gonna start sharing my screen so you can also see yes. So this webinar again is about activating an inclusive local ecosystem for change. And the webinar that you were having last week was about mandate setting. For this webinar is about activating the inclusive local ecosystem for change. So for the agenda for today is mainly that I'm gonna have moments for welcome you, like right now. Then we are gonna be also sharing some key messages on activating an inclusive ecosystem for change, why this matters, and also some ingredients that we will be sharing with you. Then we will be having a moment to hear some stories from the field. So we have invited some activated ecosystems to share their stories with us, but as well as some practitioners from different cities that are not directly, or some of them are directly or indirectly involved in the city, in the functioning of the city. So we invited these different stories to be shared. Then we will have a space for reflections and learning, and discussing a little bit about what we've heard, and also like reflect back on those some of the learnings that we will be, some of the things that we will be sharing here. Then we also have some moment to share upcoming resources, and then part of concluding this webinar. And again, like we are co-hosting this, so different people will be moderating these different stories from the field. To give you a little bit of the background, so here is the climate transition map. As you have already seen many times, we have created and co-created this climate transition map. And today we'll be exploring the process that is this circle on activating an inclusive ecosystem for change. And the main aspect to share about this circle, the activating an inclusive ecosystem for change, is really like an element of the climate transition map that will help us, will contribute us to enable a new climate neutral normal. So so when the goal of our transition is to actually move towards this climate neutrality, it is also critical as part of this enabling factor that all actors of the city are contributing to the way that the city is operating, in order for this new future that we are co-creating, the climate transition, becomes the new normal, and that each actor of the city, of the ecosystem of the city, is also enabled to contribute and benefit equitably for of this transition towards climate neutrality. So that's also a little bit about the why activating an inclusive ecosystem for change. You will be also hearing from the different stories from the field, also like to learn a little bit more about the why of this activating an inclusive ecosystem for change. I will also, so we also wanted to share some ingredients for activating an inclusive ecosystem for change. Are not this is some of the ingredients that we are going to be sharing today with you, but these are some of the ingredients that we will be sharing, but are not the only ones. But that you will also in the process will be discovering other ingredients that are also important for your context, based on your context. So one of the ingredients that we are gonna be sharing with you is strengthening the means and capability of the ecosystem to act. So when we talk about the inclusive ecosystem for change, we also need to find that there is also some strengths, and that is not easy to activate an inclusive ecosystem for change without also strengthening the capacities and the means of this ecosystem to act. And that for us is about enabling the ecosystem actions. So it's also about empowering all the actors, but also giving the enough conditions for these actors to be empowered. For instance, creating safe spaces for the actors to come, also the means, the resources, and also the competencies and skills for this ecosystem, for the actors in the ecosystem to come together, especially the resources for them also to be and be included, and also provide inspiration for them to join. Then also when we talk about an inclusive ecosystem for change, is also not only about strengthening the means and capability for the ecosystem, but also strengthen the internal capacity for the municipality actually to allow these conditions to be created. And we are asserting here that to ensure, we need to also to ensure that internally in the municipality, in your context, there is an internal alignment, and also create the inner conditions as well for the different departments to agree that this is something that is needed, and so that we can ensure that different actors are also part of the ecosystem. So there's a need of an alignment, internal alignment of this of the agreement that we need to activate an inclusive ecosystem for change, that we need to include other actors in this climate transition. Then another ingredient that we find important to activate an inclusive ecosystem for change is also to focus on process and relationships. For instance, that a process-oriented cannot guarantee that that what we are aiming at is we're not going to achieve our goals, but yet that we also argue that the processes and relationships is essential for climate neutrality. For instance, that in order to activate an inclusive ecosystem for change is not only something that is going to be a straightforward activation, but it needs to have to be based in a process that is something that is built to last in without having a long-term perspective. Another ingredient that we find very important to activate an inclusive ecosystem for change is also to cultivate and nurture radical collaboration. That is again is also very connected to the process and relationships, and to focus on that, because what we are building in order to activate the inclusive ecosystem for change is also building trust, building those also the exchange of all the actors, strengthen that that all the actors also create an understanding of the different actors and the different needs and the different contexts that these actors are where are they at, and that cultivate and nurture that radical collaborations with having in mind that these actors are also having their own challenges and also like bringing their own assets to the equation. And this is quite very linked to also the reciprocity, because as we are having moments bringing different actors and including and having that space of a plurality of actors in the ecosystem, there's also like need some reciprocity to navigate the dynamic tensions between my organizational or my self-interest with the shared interest. And that creates a space also for that interaction and understanding, and experiment with new ways of engaging, new ways of doing, and also like, yes, navigating that dynamic tension. And last but not least, that some of the ingredients that we found out also for the activating an inclusive ecosystem for change is also about focus on meaningful engagement and participation. That is also like about including the full and the diversity of the actors to the climate transition journey. That is also mean about ensuring that not only the usual suspects are included, but also like that we extend the reach of our actions in the climate transition journey to the citizens and communities that are farther away from political power, from this relational power. And this is also not only including them as an afterthought, but really like hearing them from the start, from the problem framing to the implementation, to the assessments, and also learning. So these are some ingredients for activating an inclusive ecosystem for change. This might sound something that comes out of the, that is not landing yet. And that's why we also created the opportunity to hear from different stories from the field about also how they think of the process of activating an ecosystem for change. And also to also see if those ingredients that I am mentioning right now are somehow connected to their own lived experience and their stories from the field. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now. And yes, and again, these are the ingredients that we think that will contribute to you. But let's see also hear from the stories if they are also like, we see that are some interconnections between what we are sharing here, and also to see how this lands with you and your own context and your own, own context of where you're at here in this process. And for that, I will invite my colleague, Max, to start introducing this round of stories from the field.
Yeah, thank you, Adriana. Can everybody hear me okay? Yep, okay, perfect. Yeah, so as Adriana was saying, we felt that a conversation, an opportunity to dive into the topic of activating an inclusive ecosystem for change wouldn't be a complete and effective and helpful conversation if it really didn't stem from and come from the conversations of people doing the work. And that's a lot of why we're trying to spend more time here listening and discussing with these folks. So in terms of the order of action, I'll share a little bit about my own experience and tangential experience working on a project in Boston. We'll have a conversation from some folks who've been working in Lahti, not necessarily the team that's currently leading the work right now, though they're encouraged to be involved in whichever ways, but acknowledging that there's work that is coming into that as well, and some of the folks here will be able to speak to that. As well as some expert collaborators from a number of different cities that have really done great work to build that kind of activated local ecosystem in really inclusive ways. The important thing to also keep in mind is that we're in a really nice setup to ask questions as well, right? So please do, as these conversations are happening. We've designed some questions to help facilitate the conversations. But if you have questions and you want some clarity, or you want to dig into the examples a little more, or what have you, please do. Please add that to the chat, and we can make sure that your questions are being answered. We'll also speak to this a little bit later, but we're interested very much in supporting ways by which each of us and each of you as cities can communicate with each other and share the questions you may have about this work, as well as your experience doing it. You know, some of you may have a lot of experience already activating these kinds of inclusive ecosystems. Some of you, this may be a more new aspect of the work, but we want to find ways to do that. And we'll speak to that a little bit later. But please, if you have questions, voice them. So as I said, the example that we're going to start with is one not necessarily from my own direct work, but I worked for a period before joining Democratic Society in Boston, and it felt like not to bully or point out any errors on the fact on Boston's work, but it's also nice to highlight a city that isn't in the consortium, and we're not pointing any fingers or suggesting anyone has done any work that we don't want to speak about. So we really wanted to speak to something that I knew, that we knew, that could emphasize why this kind of work, why building collaborations across diverse stakeholders and building this kind of coalition of action in a really activated, inclusive way can be very effective, and why it can be incredibly ineffective to not do that. So the work that I'll speak to is a project that was going on in Boston around 2017. At the time, it had become apparent to the city and to the public school committee that many students, especially in the older grades, were essentially being asked to be at school at times that were really quite unhealthy for their brain health at that age. The more they learn, we learn about growth and brain health, but also really unproductive. And so the decision was made that something has to be done to address this, and we need to figure out how to address the start times for schools. And in so doing, the decision was made also, okay, so we'll create some collaborations around the city to try and effectively build out a transition in which a massive number of schools can all transition their hours. So totally new timings will be set up, new bus systems will have to be set up, entirely new systems will have to be put in place. Seems like a very small, as I'm sure you're all aware, small changes are actually big systems of change. And so they decided, well, we'll make what we think is the most effective and quick way to go about doing this. So they recruited a team from the Massachusetts, from MIT, and they worked with them to assess the data of what the different start times were, how many students were there, what their ages were. They looked at the existing bus patterns and how they could move students around the city. And it was really a massive technical feat, a feat of systems engineering that through this process and using machine learning to strategically create patterns, they redid the entire system. But what you may have noted was that I did not mention that they spoke to any parents or students or those who were really going to be affected deeply by the shifts in these new bus patterns, new timings. And in so doing, they created an incredible shift on the lived experience of a vast number of stakeholders, caregivers, parents, students alike. And so when they announced this massive change, 84% of students were going to have a shift across Boston. We're going to have a shift in the daily schedule. And what happened was that they got the new proposal was met with tremendous resistance. And it completely faltered and it completely fell apart. And after a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of really sophisticated innovation and technological expertise were invested, The reality was that because there was no effort to actually engage the broader and wider spectrum of stakeholders, people felt very unheard. They felt very uninvolved in the decisions that were made. And that was the real primary issue. I remember being there at the time that what we heard was not as much people saying that they didn't care about the health of teenagers or that they didn't care about better allocations of time. It's that they cared that they had no role to play in the way these decisions were carried out. And this isn't to say that the systems engineering was any less sophisticated or any less impressive. It's just to say that what ended up happening was that they didn't change the times, that the transition didn't happen because there was no effort along the way to bring people into the fold and to ensure that there was a wide spectrum of people for whom this new normal was what they wanted to be their new normal. And so I think what we want to encourage here is to shift away from this kind of slightly different topic of interest, school times, which might not seem all that relevant to climate transition, but to emphasize the role, once we do think about the climate transition, about how this really plays into systemic transformation overall, and the ways that you can take on all the way around the climate transition, how to build and mobilize and activate inclusively the kind of ecosystem that can collectively work towards this new normal. So I'm going to pause there and I'm going to hand it off to Anna to speak more from the example, less from the Boston example, and a much more close, a much more focused example. Anna.
Thank you, everyone. So now we are going to talk about Lahti, the European Green Capital 2021. So my name is Anna Huttunen and I work currently as the Climate Neutral Cities Advisors at the Net Zero Cities. But I used to work in the city of Lahti as the Manager for Sustainable Mobility. And I'm very happy to discuss here with my former colleagues and cooperation partners from Lahti. So we have today here Saara Vauramo, who is currently working for Rambo as a consultant, but used to work for more than 10 years as the environmental director for City of Lahti and also the program director for the European Green Capital of Lahti. Then we have Hanna Kopra. I would say that she's the most active citizen of Lahti, so it's great to have her on board today. And then, of course, we have Ville Uusitalo, who is the associate professor from the LUT University. Ville has been a great partner to work with. We have done a lot of projects together as well. And yeah, we have like 30 minutes to discuss about Lahti's journey to becoming the European Green Capital 2021. It started from the very polluted Lake Vesijärvi in the 70s, and yeah, the journey has been long and required a lot of work, a lot of deep diving, and also great cooperation between all kinds of actors in the city, internally and externally, also regionally, and also beyond, in order to activate the ecosystem for change. And of course, before I'm going to hand over to Saara to give us one more time the story of Lahti becoming the European Green Capital, a short version. I would also like to say that, of course, like the work is continuing Lahti. There are great projects, there are great processes going on, and Lahti is also one of the mission cities on the way of becoming carbon neutral by 2030. So Saara, I would like to ask you to give us a short overview of the story of Lahti.
Oh, thank you, Hanna. Very, very good afternoon for all of you. It's also great that we have a lot more people from Lahti also present here. I would like to say that we have actually the current environmental director, Elina Ojala at least, and also the climate expert, Aino Kulonen. So please also feel free to join the discussion later on. I haven't actually prepared a full presentation, but I just would like to show you a sort of a story map in the web, and I can also link this later on, and it tells pretty much about our city. But briefly about the story that we've been going through. So Lahti is a medium-sized European city with 120,000 inhabitants. We used to be also a very, very industrialized city. Also, we currently are, but also our city suffered quite a lot during 1990s when the collapse of Soviet Union hit our city very severely. And that also affected our local economy, and we lost a lot of jobs, and the unemployment rate in early 1990s was almost 30%. So it was a pretty rough situation where to start development. But when Finland joined EU 1995, our city was maybe they had ability enough to actually apply for the EU funding already in that time to start developing new possibilities. And we started very pragmatic issues such as the water treatment. The Lake Vesijärvi, as Anna told, was one of the most eutrophicated lakes in Finland during that time. And also we started collecting waste separately, and that was completely different kind of waste management scenario in comparison to any other city basically in Finland. So we started very early, but we have been developing our city since that, and Lahti was one of the first cities in Finland to take really ambitious climate goal as a part of the city strategy almost 50 years ago already. So that was maybe 2009. I remember that we had a city council that decided that we should cut our CO2 emission from 1990 level into half by 2025. And I think nobody actually thought about the roadmap itself. We didn't really understand how to make it, but we started implementing actions. And we took our own city-owned companies, the energy segment, the buildings, and so on, and started doing really concrete investments. And we actually reached the goal maybe 5 years before the target year. So we have already cut roughly our emissions into half from that level. But the story goes on, and now we work a lot with climate neutrality, and I would say that maybe the low-hanging fruits have already been taken, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. But maybe this background of the work from the very also hard years, hard decades of not things being in a very easy way here, it bring us the award of being the European Green Capital, and we really wanted to also build the year as a very engaging year. And although that was in the middle of COVID times, I think we were able to get quite many different kind of stakeholders to work with us. So we had different municipalities, but also a lot of private companies, a lot of NGOs, citizens, ambassadors. Hanna used to be also our ambassador during last year. And then also the international city networks. And I'm pretty happy really that it seems to go on a very, very good way also. So maybe that's briefly the story behind our city, but there's so many different kind of actions, so many inspiring smaller stories, but also the ways that we've been working together with stakeholders. So I'm happy if you can take a look at our story later on. I will send the link to the chat. Yeah, but that's long story in short.
Thank you, Sarah. That was a great introduction for our discussion now. As you heard from Sarah, a lot has been done, a lot of actions, a lot of stakeholders, a huge ecosystem has been involved along the years, maybe in different roles, different ways, and in different kind of volumes. But maybe if we talk about more from your personal perspectives now, since you have been all involved in the ecosystem and also development of the ecosystem, I would like to ask you to reflect on how you see or saw actually your central mandate or the reasoning for your work or the activities that you have initiated in Lahti. during the years.
Yeah.
Maybe we start from the citizen side. Hanna, would you like to start?
Well, it was more like, why not? And because, well, I live here and I want all the best to my city. So it was really natural thing to do. And I have been in a kind of neighborhood, how do you say, godmother in a way. Lahti has these kind of people in different parts of the city who are in between of the, I mean, the city as a kind of, I don't know, people feel it's really hard to be connected to the city straight away. So they need this kind of soft ground you can come and talk to and so on. I have been doing that for a few years. So it was really easy me to be involved. And of course I can see that because we have this, in Finland, we have the most, well, science education for, I mean, kindergarten age children and for pupils and high schoolers, not only LUT University or Lab Applied Sciences. So I feel it's kind of opportunity us as a city to be something more and also good for business.
Yeah, great words. So what I get from you, Hanna, you're saying that you just want to be involved, even though it's not so easy always. So maybe that's something that we also have to think about further on. How would you, Sara, maybe answer to what Hanna was saying?
Yeah, it's super important that we just have people who wants to be part and who are willing to bridge maybe the gap between governments and just normal citizens. I guess it might be really quite complicated to sometimes follow longer processes because we're living at times where there's a lot of news, excessive amount of news, and it's hard maybe to follow what are the longer term goals. And I think really the city governmental work that's ultimately legitimated by citizens. So to be able to actually make any transitional work, we need to have enough support from political decision making too, and also from the field, but also different parts of it. So local people, but also businesses need to be part of that. Then I also think that sort of a central mandate for sustainability transition, it should also come from our global situation with climate and biodiversity crisis. So continue things as we do, it's not really an option. So we need to change things in a very large scale and in a very fast pace too. And sort of, I think now my question is that, is nature having the voice really?
Exactly. So from very local to very global, and we all have to act. How about Ville? You come from research. What do you think is your driving force or the central mandate for the actions?
I agree with both Sara and Hanna. I think we have to do quick actions because of this global situation, and it's also a key in our university's strategy to provide information and research how to do a quick transition to more sustainable world. So it was quite natural to be a part of this process. And as a university, I think our main goals are to do high-level research, provide education, and to do societal impact. And I think this societal impact linkage is very clear to do cooperation with local cities, and it provides us good opportunities to do piloting. If we have new ideas, we can test them at the city level. And based on this, the data and learnings we get from those pilots, we can then do high-level research, and it also provides us like super good opportunities from education perspective. So there are local companies, local organizations who need new ideas and can provide, for example, master's thesis positions for our students. And on the other hand, we can learn about the actual work that has been done in the city level and also in other organizations in the regions. And our students can learn what kind of challenges organizations are facing in terms of sustainability and what kind of practical lessons can be learned from that work. So I think, yeah, it was very natural for us to join this process and ecosystem.
Yeah, I think we also have great examples of joining the different forces for a bigger ecosystem. Maybe I can give an example. The CityCap project that we did in Lahti, where we developed an application for personal carbon trading. We did it together with 9 partners, and of course LUT University was one of the central partners there. But we also had like smaller companies involved, and regional organizations, and also the citizens, because we really developed the application with our citizens to our citizens in order to give them a new possibility to be part of like us tackling the climate change. Yeah, so that's maybe like a very certain example of creating ecosystem.
And I must add here that it was so amazing to see actually old grannies developing the world first personal carbon trading scheme. I really saw that now things will start changing, and we often really sort of underestimate also different groups and their abilities to actually be part of very, very progressive projects too.
Yeah, true. And I think it's also very important that we always remember to invite everyone, and that we create different kind of ways of different kind of groups to be part of the ecosystem development, right? So if you think about the ecosystem development, maybe in the broader or maybe in more example wise, how did you work with conflicting interests? And how were you maybe able to get those not so usual partners to join the ecosystem and work towards the goals? Would you like to, Sara, elaborate on this?
Yeah, sure. So I used to work as the environmental director for the city. So I was sort of an acting voice for the governmental body of a city. But I also, like internally, I wanted to be a change maker also, trying to sort of maybe push and accelerate sustainability transition and increase our resilience, but also sort of building courage, being proud of the work that we've been doing for so far already. And I really felt that I had a privilege to act as a storyteller person, taking people into and building their words, being part of the story. And that story really started to resonate, the story from deprived industrial city working towards major sustainability transition goals. And I think that was the reason why we got actually the Green Capital Award. But also, like you started with the work of Lake Vesijärvi, and that's a work that we've been doing already 30 years or more, maybe. Actually, when we started the work, there were a lot of people saying that it's a waste of money, and it doesn't really make any sense to start the purification process of the lake, and it's just way too eutrophicated, and you cannot actually achieve any goals. But then we got a lot of private companies also working with the city, and also new kind of funding and partnerships models, and that changed the viewpoint, I think. So it's also important to not only work with citizens. I definitely think that's good, but it's also good to have private sector often, because then it resonates to other kind of maybe political actors that's more seriously consider what they have in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think we have also other very interesting example of activating a local, not so usual suspect. Ville, would you like to share us a story about our carbon neutral ice hockey team, Pelicans, and what you did with them?
Yes, so I think also here the example shown by Lahti has been very interesting, since Lahti has have those ambitious climate goals. I think it has resonated also in companies, but also in other organizations operating in the region. And surprisingly for us, also many local like sport organizations and also cultural organizations, they have also become interested in their climate impacts and what can they do for reducing those impacts. And this actually started from the local symphony orchestra. So they wanted to understand their climate impacts, and one of our students did an analysis for them about the carbon footprint and ways to decrease emissions. And also the local professional ice hockey team also wanted to know their carbon footprint, and we did cooperation with them. We analyzed how high their carbon footprint is and what are the main sources of their emissions, and this was done in 2018, and every year they have been doing improvements based on best current understanding how they can reduce emissions. And last year they were announced as the world's first climate neutral ice hockey team. So I think this example shown by city, it also provides like good vibes for other organizations in the area and interest towards similar goals.
Definitely. It has been, and it's like really good way also to promote sustainable mobility in the city, because they are usually groups that, well, often they are maybe car-centric groups that come to the matches, etc. And that's again a new tool to also get people engaged. How about Hanna? How do you see, how has the city changed? And do you think that the possibility of all different kind of actors, citizens, has it improved during the last years? And what are like the biggest changes that you have seen?
Well, I've been living in Lahti for 13 years now, and we have come, I think, really far, because now we have the European Green City Year and the ambassadors, and then we have these kind of discussions going on now, kind of regularly, and we invite people, or Lahti invites people, and then we have people facilitating those conversations, and we are having one in this week's Saturday, I think. I should know because I'm kind of facilitate one discussion, and we have these kind of things. We have the how do you Sara say OSPU in English?
Participatory budget.
Yes, we have had that now 2 times, and then we're gonna have it again, and people are kind of getting used to it, that we have and we do things like this. Well, last year some people were like, oh, this is waste of money and time, I don't understand why. But then when the hockey team took over, it became like really hard for some people to kind of not be interested that could I do something, because ice hockey has that kind of place in the Finnish culture that even though you don't play or watch ice hockey, it kind of gives it, or whatever it is, kind of status that this must be good, this must be solid. So it was really, really clever to have them on. And because they are young male, they don't feel like, well, older males sometimes feel. So it was really natural. And that was, I mean, it made my life easier with many people. And so we're very far from the place, and the mental place in which we were maybe 10 years ago. Now everything is easier. So it takes kind of long time, but still it doesn't. So because I'm old and every year goes faster, but anyway, it takes time, but we have to kind of do it again and again and again and try different things and have different kind of, I mean, testing, demos, and then we see what really works the best. So we have a lot of things going on, and we need to have a lot of things going on.
Very good. And of course, that's also great to hear that it actually, like, also you can see it from the outside, like outside of the internal municipality, so that it's just not the people or the internal transition team working towards something that's actually not showing outside to the broader audience, or they do not feel that they can somehow be involved.
I mean, one thing I feel that we need to do something more is our communications and our local medias that are still somewhere way back, 10 years back. So we need to get them to have different kind of maybe voice or city identity. So I think that is one thing we need to work with, but mainly we're doing well.
Yeah, but media is very important. I guess we all who are here, we also have kind of had our share of media taking up issues and bringing up certain kind of opinions, but maybe it's also the city's role and the ecosystem role then to be able to argumentate and find the reasoning for what is being done, even though there is opposition. What do you think, Sara, about this?
Good question. It's sometimes very different, the picture what from a certain city, what you get from international media in comparison to local news. But it also seems to be that the local media is always the toughest one to deal with, and maybe that's also healthy, because city governments works with the taxation money and for the public, for the people. So it's sort of their relationship with local media is always under potential criticism, and we just need to tolerate with that. But I also felt that in many times we had a good partnership with them, actually. Just the fact that we get so many news all the time, that it's very hard to build a coherent story of where are we actually heading to and where we come. So that's maybe part of responsible city or municipal, person working in there that's telling this, enlightening the word.
Yeah, exactly. Max, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and ask if you could ask one more question, and then we're gonna pivot. But if there's one more question you think would be helpful to put out there.
Yes, definitely. Let's do that. What do you think would be the most important thing in your work that has helped you to build this ecosystem and really also reach the goals that you have wanted to reach in your work? Maybe we start with Ville.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I'm not sure how clear answers I have, but I think somehow like building this trust between different organizations, it helps a lot. And I think we started with smaller projects. We get some external funding to work together and to learn from each other. I think that really helped to understand also what others are doing. And gave new ideas how we can combine our goals and understanding and skills, and that has led to bigger projects and more larger variety of different topics that we are working with. So in a way, I really like this working together and learning from each other and then building up based on that. And also it's about personal relationship. I think that if at a higher level you are told to do cooperation, it doesn't work like that. You have to know people and learn to work with them and do cooperation. I think that's much more fruitful.
Definitely, I couldn't agree more. And then maybe shortly Hanna and Sara, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Well, for me, it was easy because the Lake Vesijärvi project was so long-term project, and everybody has memories about the lake was very polluted. And then there was like my father-in-law, he remembered when he was a child and they went with the family having a picnic, they just could take water from the lake straight, and now we haven't or couldn't done that for years and years. So everybody had that kind of relationship with the lake. So it was so intimate in that way. So in a way, it was one of the really good reasons why to do this kind of things. So relationship with the nature.
Perfect. And Sara?
Yeah, well, the most important thing, I would actually like to raise the meaning of language, because I think one important thing when talking about sustainability is really the language. It can build trust, but it can also divide people, and there's an excessive amount of different kind of terminology when talking about sustainability, but that just doesn't open up to people. And it's very, very important to pick your words in a way that everyone could understand. So that's my last message.
That's a very important point. And I guess we also learned a lot about that during the years in Lahti. Yeah, so thank you so much, Sara, Ville, and Hanna. It was super exciting to talk with you. And I still would like to hint you to check what is currently going on in Lahti, because our former colleagues, they are doing an amazing job. And Lahti is, for instance, now describing planetary prescriptions to our citizens to make them live more sustainably and more healthy. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, everybody, for participating. That was a fantastic, I think, dive into the work and the ways that you've really worked together in Lahti. So very much appreciate you sharing about it. I would encourage you folks, again, if you have questions, please, for anyone that just spoke, please post them in there. And if the folks, if Hanna, Ville, Sara, Anna, if you're able to stay and respond, that would be fantastic. In the meantime, I think we're going to transition to our next dive, our next stories from the field portion. And to get into this, I'm going to ask that Tumami introduce our discussants.
And they can raise their hands.
Yes. Yes, please make it a little bit easier for our Zoom coordinator here.
Hi, everyone. So I'll go ahead and start. I'm really excited for our next three speakers, that we have some different experiences that are going to be speaking to a lot of the points that were just raised in this nice example coming from Lahti. So we have three different experiences. Two of them are both working really hard all of them are working as external collaborators in the ecosystem. And so they're working with cities, but it's important to notice that they are working as actors in the city's ecosystem. And so they're going to be speaking about their experience and how important it is to develop these relationships with the different ecosystem actors to create a truly active and flourishing ecosystem for action. And we have So we have David Nordling from DG Gutenberg and Michele D'Alena from Fondazione Innovazione Urbana in Bologna and Marc Aguilar from BitLab Barcelona. And they will be speaking about the tools and methods and processes and knowledge that they are equipping citizens with to help incorporate them in and encourage them to participate in public life. I think we'll start with Michele D'Alena.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye everybody. I'm Michele D'Alena from Bologna, Italy. I'm in charge in a team called Civic Imagination inside a foundation, Fondazione Innovazione Urbana, funded by Bologna and Bologna Municipality and University. We have a clear mission. We have to work to push forward the innovation about the public policy of the municipality, engaging citizens and researchers, enterprises, communities, using the method depending on the context. First of all, well, something about the DNA of the city. Bologna has an incredible history about participation. Is a lab of the country, and also in the last years confirm this DNA. In the 2014, Bologna municipality create a urban common or regulation about urban common. And this is and this is a story about a new relation between municipality and citizen, because after that regulation, municipality recognize informal group first of all, and then recognize the energy of the community. So everybody can taking care about the city, not only the simple bench, but also a piece of a park, a school. So we can work with a partner, not with stakeholder. We can organize pact and not contract. There is a new grammar, a new languages, a new actor in the city. There is a new right to taking care about the city. Taking care, doing politics is not only a matter for a policymaker, but is everybody can design the city. And after that innovation, we create an institution, a new institution, the Fondazione Innovazione Urbana, just to manage this new type of relation between the bottom up and the government. You know, also in Italy, also in Bologna, people don't trust to us, people don't trust to government, but there are a lot of new forms of activism. So we work on the ground just to strengthen the relation, and we work the most fragile zone of the city with a multi-professional team composed by a proximity agent. We invent a new team. We create a master degree to understand the competencies for this new target, and with urbanists, with sociologists, with they are to listen to the people, they are to manage the conflict. We create this stuff in order to stay on the ground. In Bologna, we have got 6 neighborhoods, so we have got 6 community managers, and they work on the ground. They work with the people, with the the community. They have not target, they have partners. And this is a great occasion to recognize that institution cannot re-begin or redesign a relation. We need a new institution, like a bridge outside the bureaucratic approach, outside the not flexible management. You know, it's not easy also because we have to change the way we work, and this is the model built in the last century. So it's like a cultural trip to push forward a new way to work, a new way to organize. Another great innovation was with the neighborhood labs. We create 6 constant laboratories to engage people. So everybody can share information with the administration, but not only needs, also ideas, projects and capacities in a constant participatory process. Inside these labs, everybody can participate to the participatory budgeting, for example, but also in co-design labs to manage, to imagine the future of the city. Or it's like a place, a democratic place, organized in the proximity, because we have understood that the people want to participate in the proximity. People want to take care about the park close to their home, to take care about the school of their son. So we use this new idea of participation, organizing labs in order to stay in the proximity. So is a new infrastructure. Is not easy because we have got a lot of conflicts inside the municipality and outside with the communities. Like I said before, people don't trust to us. We have got a lot to do, but I think that we have got a big responsibility because we have got a big vision. We want to work to redesign the power of the city. We need to speak about power. Power is a great word because, like history says, power is not for everybody. But we want a new relation. If we want a new relation, we have to engage people. But if we want to engage people, we have to give power to them. Power to redesign a park, power to reimagine the balance of the city, to regenerate the idea of to be stakeholder with mother and father in the parks or the elderly people in a neighborhood. We have got a lot of new form of activism, but we need to recognize them. A second word is time. After a long time of extractive approaches, people don't trust to us, and we need time to reconnect emotion. It's like a relation. We need time to become friend. And it's the same for the citizen. We have to stay not only for a lab, even more in the most fragile zone of the city. We have to stay months and months. They have to recognize us like partner. They have to speak in friendly way. And this community agent, the proximity agent, have the ability to change the languages depending on the context. I have to speak with, they have to speak with migrant people, with mother, with father, with rider, with whatever you want, always using the right tone of voice. We need time to restore an empathic way. Third words, empathic is the most central word, I think, because we need to go outside the institution. We need to stay on the ground. We have to mix competencies, always trying to understand that the people don't trust to us and they don't feel well when they speak to the policymaker. So, okay, Tamami?
Sorry, Michele, thank you so much. Just for time, and on this note of trust that I think is so critical. I know that David had a lot to say also about this issue, so maybe we can also hear a little bit from his experience talking to this point.
Yes, please. I will just introduce myself briefly. My name is David. I'm part of DigiDem Lab, as Tamami said. We are an independent democracy lab. We're based in Sweden, in Gothenburg, and we work a lot with Swedish cities and cities around the world in delivering these kinds of participatory and deliberative processes. Michele, you said that Bologna confirmed the DNA of participation a few years back. From a Swedish context, I think like we're more looking at developing this DNA of participation in many ways. You are describing a pretty ambitious framework for participation, whereas we are looking city by city, examining really what can we do in terms of participation. We work a lot with the city of Gothenburg. We have the participatory budgeting in some areas, and we're also examining to create the first climate assembly in Sweden. So just you get the context where I'm coming from in this discussion. So let's talk about trust. When we engage in these kinds of processes, what is it that are engaging people? Well, first of all, Michele, you made a point out that there is a tendency that people don't trust the city or the municipality or what it could be. I mean, this is a paradox, I think, in Sweden, because in general, we have quite high trust for our institutions, but we also have a lot of groups that don't place this trust in the institutions. There's some groups that are missed, so to speak. Also, we see a decrease in engagement in civil society, which some researchers, they propose that this could lead to even decreasing trust as well. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, okay, but how can we make sure that we involve stakeholders, but not only involve stakeholders, also that stakeholders are aware that they are stakeholders? Because when we talk about climate and climate change, I mean, nobody isn't a stakeholder in the long run, right? So this brings the question, okay, how can we make sure to make use of this knowledge, this local knowledge? How can we involve so many as possible in this journey? And one thing that we find like a key concept to this is the promise of change. Like we have to engage in this because we have to get stuff done. Where we come from as an independent democracy lab, we have a quite good position in doing this. Because we're not like we don't have a history with the citizens, as for instance housing companies or municipalities may have. So we're not burdened by distrust in the same sense. So we can function as a bridge builder in a way, but that it's also there's limits to our capacity as a bridge builder, because we can build a bridge. We use these methods that Michele talked about, like face-to-face, and we have to have a emotional connection. But for these bridges to last, and these bridges to you have to fill them with content. You have to deliver on this promise of change. And Adriana, you talked about like this meaningful change as a key ingredient to these processes. Well, what does that require? What does that require from the organization, from the city? Probably it means that for engagement to work, this also requires a shift within the organization. How we look at how decisions are being made, how we look at how we are involving different partners in different stages, and well, to be totally blunt, we are still figuring out the key formula in the Swedish context to stimulate this organizational shift. Things are moving in Sweden now. There's happening stuff with regards to participatory processes, but the remedy to this is not quite clear just yet. But I think if I would just take away one thing from this, I think that like we have to deliver on the promise of change, because that is an engaging factor in how we work with engagement. So maybe I keep it there, and if like, please involve me if you have any further questions. But yeah.
Thank you, David. I'd like to invite now Mark, if you'd like to comment on this, and also perhaps on if there were any elements of the Lahti experience that you'd like to build on or emphasize that you've also found true in your work at the BidLab Barcelona.
Thank you, Tamami. Yeah, definitely. I think for me, it's interesting to be closing this round of interventions, because we at BidLab, we're a grassroots cultural organization. We work very much on digital cultural projects. So I feel that of all these speakers, we're probably the ones who are most distant from the government, both in terms of outlook and in terms of format of our organization. So I think I can provide probably like an interesting counterpoint from the other side. We work very much on the grassroots projects, and I think probably it's easier to understand the kind of things we do if I just give very quickly an account of a current project that we're very deeply involved. It's called Plataformas, and basically, to say it short, it's a bottom-up project that has started with minimal involvement of the city of Barcelona, but which is coming to be increasingly aligned with the wider city goals for climate transition. So it's, I think, an instance of how things that can start very independently from city planning and city offices can, in the end, if let's say the dynamics of collaboration are right, end up being part of a solution. So just to give a quick outline, the Plataformas is a grassroots project that we started 2 years ago during the lockdown of the COVID pandemic, to create a platform for the digitization of cultural services. Okay, so the idea is there's lots of commercial proprietary solutions in the market, but when you're talking about very local needs of very local organizations, which in the end they end up being quite a large share of the economic actors in any ecosystem. So in Barcelona, 90% of cultural organizations are SMEs, and the idea with platforms is that we're trying to meet all the digital, cultural, all the digitization needs that communities and small entities can have at a local level, with a different model, which is more based on open source technology with decentralized co-owned infrastructure. So we sort of operate like as a large cooperative, in the sense that we all pitch in, we all put our needs, and we all try to intercooperate so we can meet these needs via mutual support. Now, this is a project that started during the most difficult part of the pandemic. As many of you might be aware, in Spain, we had in spring 2020, we had 4 months of full lockdown. And for cultural organizations which were involved in trainings, courses, performances, workshops, concerts, was a complete disaster. So from one day to the other, we had to rush to find ways to digitize all that so we could keep running, so we could keep having revenue, and we could keep paying salaries and meeting our bills. In the ecosystem, there's quite in Barcelona. There's quite a strong free software community that collaborated with the whole group to see how we could deploy local open source instances of Jitsi, of PeerTube, of Big Blue Button, of other kinds of software that is useful for cultural organizations to just make that digitization. Now, after the emergency happened, we realized that this model of cooperating to meet local needs at a local level, but with a reduced, both reduced economic cost, but then also reduced carbon footprint and bigger control over the technology and the capacities for cultural digital creation at the local level. That was a model that had promise. So these last 2 years, we've kept working to try to get more resources, get more structure, get more organization, to see if that was a complementary model or a different model for meeting the local digital needs of not just of a community of small companies, of small practitioners of culture, but then also of non-profits, of even citizens who can pitch in, join the group as equals, and then also put in their interests and their needs into this process. And increasingly, as we've gained more weight and we've our experiments have become closer to what would be a production platform, we've come more and more aligned with the needs of the local government. So what we see is that there's a big push in the government to both to digitize cultural organizations, which currently, just to give an easy example, so to do a course or to do a training or to do a concert or to do a cultural service, that this still usually involves a lot of traveling within the city, and sometimes even from outside the city to the city. So if you can provide a service that can actually digitize that can turn some of the activities that are face-to-face into virtual, not all of them, not necessarily, but at least some of them, then you're already reducing lots of transportation and mobility within the city. Also, we've seen that by operating locally owned services, you can also make the decision, for instance, just use green energy, or then also reduce the energy fluxes that the energy consumption that these many cultural services require. Rather than if the service, if the server is deployed in several different locations across the world. So in short, I think this is an example in, let's say, a sector that it's not the first that you might think of when you think about climate transitions, but culture does still have an impact. It does still have a carbon footprint. So it's let's say not the usual suspect in terms of carbon footprint, but still something that can provide a solution that can be like a part of the solution for these transitions, and in a very, let's say, unlikely configuration of grassroots organizations in a very cohesive neighborhood that come together to propose something which in the end is taken up in a collaboration with the government and can be part of city plans. And currently we are in talks with the city council to have a research process so we can take some of the work we've done and then apply it and turn it into, in midterm, turn it into a service that civic centers, schools, museums in the city can have to have their own instance of this platform where they can just have a federated video repository so they can interact, they can provide these videos in their own infrastructure and not in a proprietary solution like YouTube that forces you to give up many of the of your let's say digital property rights. For that platform, you can use Jitsi for streamings and virtual meetings. You will be able to do workshops. You will be also to interact with the audience in terms of museums, of civic centers to co-govern that infrastructure. So it's in short a process that has found its way to be aligned with city government.
Thank you so much, Mark. That's a really interesting perspective also, and perhaps something that's not immediately in your mind when you think of civic participation. So we are running very short on time. I wanted to ask one last question, but I would ask all the speakers then just to provide the answer, if possible, in 1 or 2 words. So it's a little bit of a challenge because we have 1 minute and we've already eaten up everybody's mental break. So in 1 or 2 words, can you maybe help all of the cities here are going to be, trying to activate, and other stakeholders activate an inclusive ecosystem for change. So that's what we're talking about. And I was wondering if maybe you could share what's a typical blind spot, and how can they overcome these unknowns, if that makes sense. So how, maybe 1 word for the blind spot and 1 or 2 words for how to overcome that. Michele.
Okay, before I speak about power and time, now I speak about space. Every place is different, so we have to recognize the difference, and using the language, the tone of voice, and with a cross-media approach, we have to engage the existing ecosystem. We can work alone, we need alliance. So it's like community is the message. Without engaging communities, we can work. So we need to engage the energy and creating alliance, pushing forward the innovation.
Great, thank you. David.
I summarized really quickly. Okay, so as I said, everybody's a stakeholder, right? That means we have to lower thresholds for participation. And to be super duper concrete, never forget about childcare when you arrange meetings. So yeah, to keep it very, very briefly.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes,
Mark.
thank you.
Yeah, so from our perspective, I would say a difficult thing for grassroots projects sometimes is to realize become aware of the challenges that cities can have in terms of law, in terms of public procurement, to be able to effectively support some like really grassroots initiatives. And I would say that to engage in that dialogue is also something that, at least in our case, has made it easier for the city to see how we can help, and it has made it easier for us to realize how we can be effective players in that bigger picture.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to thank David, Mark, and Michele for sharing their experience with us today, and I will pass it along to Max and
Perfect.
go forward.
Well, thank you, Tamami, also for facilitating, and to each of you, David, Mark, and Michele, for sharing. That was extremely helpful, and I think it both emphasizes and complements some of the stories that we heard from Lahti. So thank you very much. So we, when we were thinking about the construct of this webinar, we wanted to make sure that we shared some of the kind of underpinning thinking that you can carry with you, some of those themes, some of those ingredients for how to do this work. We wanted to make sure that there was examples and stories and kind of contextualized ways of doing this that we could hear from the stories from the field. We also realized that this is a long time to be sitting and a long time to be listening. So we wanted to make some time to kind of maybe like shift in your seat a little bit and roll your shoulders for a second and actually engage and potentially share a little bit of your own work as well. So what we're going to do is actually share what are called spectrograms. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar. It's a bit of a bizarre word, but they're typically used in in-person large group settings. And you would have a 0 on one wall and a 10 on the other. And then I would say a 0 means this and a 10 means that. And then I want you to walk somewhere between those two walls to reflect how you feel relative to those two things. So I love cats and I love pizza. Those two things aren't necessarily binaries. You would kind of say, well, I like cats a lot more than I like pizza, so you would go to that side. Obviously, that's a very trivial example. That's not the direction we're going here, but just to give you a sense. So what we're going to do, because we don't have a big group space for us all to move, instead we have a chat and we have a hand raising feature, is we're going to ask a question or phrase a question. We'll have a 0 means this and a 10 means this. And then we're going to ask you first to put in the chat a number between that 0 and 10 that you think reflects where your work or your city's work is relative to those two kind of 0, 10. And then because we are a big group, we'll use the hand raise feature to ask folks to share a little bit, depending on where they're at. So was that in reference to the pizza and cats? Okay. So I will ask, maybe we'll drop the first one here in.
Max, maybe we can like make a trial and see if they can raise their hand if they know, find the button and so on.
Okay, so maybe everyone see if you can find, so the hand raise is going to be at the bottom of the screen. If you click reactions, there will be a button that says raise hand. Go ahead and press that. Wow, okay, great. Excellent. All right, so I'm gonna anticipate that we'll get this many raised hands when we ask the question actually. All right, so we'll start then with the question. I'm gonna drop it in the chat right now so you can see it. So put a 0 or closer to a 0 if in your city, our city, we've seen the way building trust can enable us to achieve our mandate, and put a 10 or closer to a 10 if in our city we've seen the way including a diversity of stakeholders has enabled new solutions we hadn't originally imagined. Now, I should say, it's not exactly easy necessarily to choose between these. That's why they're a spectrogram. They aren't exactly opposites. So take a second and think about, maybe you lean more to we've really built a lot of trust, or maybe you've really invested in building these kind of spaces that Kaylee was talking about. Fantastic. Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right, as people are going, so I'm going to ask that if you put a 7 or higher, that you raise your hand. Okay. I am going to now that you've raised your hand, I hope you're not surprised that I'm actually going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask, I'm going to try and pronounce slightly, okay. Oh, we're losing people. Okay. Garrett, I'm going to have to go with you because you're the only, oh, we've got some other folks, but Garrett, I also saw that you put in a 9. So would you mind telling us a little bit about what that experience is and why you're at that point now? Oh, we need Fanny to, oh, perfect.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So you picked me because you could pronounce my first name. That's like a bit lame, is it not?
I would have said, I'd say no, I was trying the other ones and people just kept dropping their hands.
See, they were sensible people. This shows there's another question here about he who raises his hand or she should not get asked in future.
Yes.
No, to be serious. Sarajevo is, first of all, I should say that in case it's not obvious, I'm Irish living in Sarajevo. So I've been in the region since the end of the war, siege of Sarajevo in '96, working in Serbia, Montenegro, the whole region. So it took a lot of diversity to get us to the point of applying. There was a group of people who were, first of all, I would call them experts in civil society, who started to look at this air quality issue was the first thing that came up. And then joining to those was the American Embassy added a new air quality monitor, which was tweeting out air quality results. And for those of you who don't know, Sarajevo is 10 to 14 times a year the dirtiest city on the planet because it gets temperature inversion and a lot of burning stuff. So first it starts with NGOs, then it starts, modelers start joining in, then some of the embassies start getting together. And in that process, I started talking to the people in the canton who worked in the society and, institutionally. And they told me that as well as including the federation, we should include people in the Republic of Srpska. And with each group of people we started looking at how the solution was more complicated, and there were more parts to the solution that by adding different people, we were going to get there. So the illustration of this is we would never have even got to a bid without adding all those different layers of people, because we got full functional urban area with Republic of Srpska. We got data from the different embassies and universities, and we had started with civil society. And of course, somebody had to lead the process, and it turned out to be the Prime Minister of the canton, quite visionary. So that's why I picked the diversity one as opposed to diversity of actors. Mm-hmm. And we're literally only at the bid, and we're now setting up some kind of vehicle or hub to get going. And it's, everyone's saying, wow, scary ambitious, but yeah, we're on the road now. So, hey, no going back. Is that enough of an answer?
That's fantastic. Thank you. And thank you also for being willing to jump in.
I wasn't willing. You picked on me, man.
Wow,
I'm kidding you. It's great. Don't worry.
Well, thank you. And I think it's fantastic to kind of hear this other perspective. I'm going to potentially pick on someone else because I've seen, and now I'm concerned that if we have total handful, maybe people won't put their hands up, but we're going to hope. If you put 3 or lower, and you are open to sharing about why you put a 3 or lower, will you please raise your hand? Amazing. We got a few brave people. Okay. I saw Saga. Would you mind sharing?
Yeah, sorry. I wasn't able to unmute myself there for a while. Sorry, my webcam is broken, so unfortunately I can't be in any image today. I would just want to start by saying I'm by no means an expert on the participatory status of Gothenburg, because I work for the European office, so that's how I'm involved with the missions. So rather, we work with supporting our city in EU issues. But I'm involved in the social aspect of those issues, and therefore I'm part of the co-creation processes. And when I got those two questions, I was thinking like, how have we as a city approached co-creation and working together with different communities, especially citizens? And it is my perception that we have in the past focused a lot more on reaching out to citizens in trying to build a stronger mandate for doing particular actions in the city, rather than perhaps focusing on co-creation from a problem definition perspective. Now, as David said before, Digidem Lab has worked a bit with Gothenburg, and it is a current process that we are co-creating with them in trying to set up a citizen lab, where we're now moving towards asking citizens, well, how would you like to engage with our climate policy? So we're sort of starting from the very end of it to try and build and move more towards also getting creative and innovative solutions out of citizen engagement. So that was why I put a 3.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing. As might be obvious to folks, I'm now going to ask that if you put between a 4 and a 6, which I think is an interesting place, it means you're trying to hold probably both. If you put between a 4 and a 6, and you're open to sharing a little bit about why and where your cities and your work is at, could you please raise your hand? Perfect. All right, Ramon, you're the first person, so thank you. We need to unmute you.
Yeah, I'm the only one.
Right.
Yeah, it's just, I put a 4 because traditionally citizen participation in Barcelona has been structured around the usual suspects, the organized associations, federations, and all the formal ways to organize people and to meet them. And we have a lot of commissions and groups, and this is how it was done, the climate action plan and other plans that are related to this. And we have tried in the last 10 years, 5 years, to engage more and more people which are more diverse, reflecting the growing diversity of the city. But this has proved very difficult. You know, it's we struggle with this, and yeah, we are torn apart with this dichotomy between classical actors, which are necessary, and the others too. But it's difficult to have a way to participate which is adequate for both groups.
I think this is when some of the kind of strategies David was mentioning is also helpful to think about how you can design in different ways. You know, it's not maybe a universal catch-all that you can get both at once right away, but that you can. This is fantastic. Well, thank you, and also thank you to each of our participants that were brave and willing to share kind of spur of the moment. I'm going to pivot slightly. There's a little bit more opportunity to be involved actually and support some of the work that we're doing as a consortium in our work to support you. But to do that, I'm going to pivot away from this spectrogram portion and ask that Adriana shares a little bit about the upcoming resources that are going to be coming available for Net Zero Cities missions.
Thank you, Max. I'm gonna, okay, yes. Yes, like, I just want to say that like all other partners across the Net Zero Cities Consortium, we are also actively evolving resources, tools, and services which can support you and your efforts to actually inclusively activate your local ecosystem. Amongst those are some set of tools that are going to also help you to the process of mapping your whole ecosystems in ways that will help you to build that trust that we were mentioning in so many different occasions here during this webinar, and also those relationships that we also were seeing that is very important to also engage diverse different stakeholders and actors of the system. That said, we also recognize that across each of the mission cities, across your cities, there is tremendous knowledge and experience. So there is a lot of value in enabling and encouraging exchange between you all. And to that end, we are super curious to get your feedback on several ideas we are exploring, which would specifically be meant to enable and encourage exchange of questions, experiences, and learnings, and other information across cities, with the focus on activating this inclusive ecosystem. And also like specifically the civic ecosystem mapping and unlocking this sustainable change. So for that, could you please like take some 5 minutes to respond to a Slido that we prepared for you? I think that Max will post in the chat the Slido, and he will be guiding you to this Slido different questions. Back to you, Max.
So yes, I've just in the chat dropped the web link. So if you go to slido.com and then use the code 4104915, that will help us to ask you a few questions. Well, really one question with a few possibilities. The main point here is that as these spectrograms in a very small way demonstrate, you've been doing this work, you're doing this work, and there's a lot of opportunity to share both in terms of the ideas you have, the experiences that you've found effective, the questions you have as well. And we want to figure out how we can best support you to exchange with each other. Of course, we're developing, as Adriana mentioned, tools that can step in and support as well. But a lot of the ways that this is going to happen, the transition, as we've been talking about for this whole webinar, really is with a lot of collaboration and learning from each other. And so if you can visit slido.com, respond to the question, and send any alternative ideas that you have. My email's there. You can send it to me, and we'll see what we can do. But in terms of creating a forum for exchange, we're really curious about how we can best make that available for you as mission cities. So with that said, yes, so great question, Garrett. If you rate them, you're basically saying which one you would prefer most, first, second, third, fourth. And so whichever ones, if there are options that feel most suitable, choose those. If it was a different one, you can share an idea as well.
Yes, Max, would you like to share your screen to show also the responses and so on? I am not able to do that.
I'm gonna wait so that people have a little bit more time to respond, so that way we can peek at it, and knowing that folks might have not be able to open it or might need to do it a little bit later. So, but be sure that you know that we'll be looking at them and considering what you prefer. So with that, and thank you for already the immediate feedback. If you have any immediate thoughts, throw them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to hand it off to our partner within the consortium and on this work, Cyril, who's going to offer a little bit of some concluding thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Yeah, from the case studies, I'll keep it very short because we're running out of time a bit. From the case studies that were presented, but also from the spectrograms that you all participated in, we've seen that there are certain recurring themes that pop up, including creating alliances, also the importance of communicating properly with one another, and also the taking away of thresholds. But it's also, and especially that's from the experiences that has been shared during this spectrograms exercise, it also points to some of the complexities that are these tasks, because yeah, on one hand, you have adding a large diversity of actors. I think there's Garrett who mentioned that. It adds more support, but also more complexity. But also what I think Ramon mentioned is that the dichotomy between the classical usual suspects and the others, and it's very difficult sometimes to navigate or to see in what way to participate okay for both people. So I think that's also what Max mentioned, is that it's very interesting to think about how to enable people to participate in different ways. And actually, have we actually asked people how they want to participate, or do they want to participate? Because there's also the question of, we always assume that people want to participate, but maybe we're not asking the right questions. Yeah, and also what was mentioned was the challenges, legal challenges of the cities themselves, but also very concrete measures, like I think that was mentioned by Mark, is to be concrete about really concrete things during gathering. You can't ask people to come to a gathering if you don't arrange proper childcare and these kind of things. And also the importance of communication, important to phrase your ways, pick your words, that everyone can understand it, what was mentioned in the Lahti case study. So I think this is already quite a lot of food for thought, I think. I think we might conclude with this session, I think, with some final messages from, I think, Tamami, who's going to talk about the upcoming webinar, sorry.
Thank you, Cyril. Yes, I just wanted to thank everyone for their participation. I think it created a really rich and interesting foundation for the webinar that we're having on Thursday and understanding the system. It'll be from 10 to 12, and we'll be going into what systems are and how understanding them can be useful for creating strategic direction. We'll be hearing from a series of cities, and also some practitioners who are working in this space, and how visualization can also assist cities in really seeing what their ecosystems are and how they can support them in their climate transition. Thank you. And I will maybe hand it back to Max or Adriana to.
Sure. Adriana, hop in if you want to say anything else, but I would just love to say thank you to all our discussants. Thank you to the team across the consortium who both supported in terms of facilitating and moderating, but also adding comments in the chat. So a lot of appreciation there. And thank you everyone who came and joined today to try and learn a few new things. Hopefully this is helpful. As with the other webinars, it's been recorded. And so if there was something that you want to return to, you'll be able to through the portal knowledge repository. And in the meantime, if you have questions, of course, the members of the consortium are available, and the portal is a great way to reach us to be able to offer feedback or answer questions. So you can use that. Adriana?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Max. And also, again, we really appreciate that you're here. And if you want to share a reaction that you're able to, and we are able also to see how you're living, you can put a heart or I don't know. But thank you so much again for being part of this webinar, and to listen to these incredible stories of what's happening in the field. And see you next time.